So since we have this sliding rate up going on in the NA version of the game right now, I'm going to try to stay ahead of whoever's on rate up and try to get these videos out a day before they come out. So when this video drops, Gilgamesh should be going on rate up, meaning the next day should be Berserker Kentoki. So, you know, hopefully this all works out. But yeah, Berserker Kentoki should be out the next day after this video comes out. And we're going to talk about if he's worth rolling for in today's video. Now, I will say personally, this is one of those servants that when I talk about, oh, like I've rolled for servants that I don't think are particularly broken, but I just really like them, Kentoki Berserker is one of those guys. And it really has 100% of it to do with his new outfit he gets for Lost Belt 5.5. Because that high-end Kyoto outfit, I think, just completely slaps. Not gonna lie, when they gave him the animation update, they kind of turned him into a box. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. And then the new outfit kind of just fixes any issues I had with the sprite. So it's purely cosmetic, but the guy can put in a bit of work. He's still a pretty decent boss killer if you don't have one of the higher end boss killers, because he pretty much has all of the basic things you would want a single target buster servant to have, aside from like survivability or something along those lines. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right into this, starting off with Kentoki's hits. Now, as is evident by the fact that he's rocking a triple buster deck, my man is a berserker, and he's going to be putting in a lot of work when it comes to just doing mad amounts of damage because he's rocking a triple buster deck on top of having a very strong buster NP. That being said, please don't ever let me catch you clicking on his quick card because it has 5% star gen and only 2 hits on it. I don't know what you'd be trying to accomplish doing that. Maybe you think it's funny, but you're really not doing anything if you decide to click the quick card. Now, if you are lucky enough to have some amount of stars floating around and you can get a crit on his arts card, because the NP gain is astronomically high at 1.03%, even though it has a low 2 hits on it, the fact that his NP gain is so high actually means Kentoki's arts card, if you can crit on it, is capable of refunding a massive amount of his NP back. Unfortunately, he has such high NP gain, if he had a better extra attack, he could actually take a bit of advantage with that, because if you don't know, the extra attack is a composite card that gens stars NP and does big boy damage. However, unlike the other cards, it actually can't crit, so it's very reliant on your natural star genning and NP gain values to actually get any work done. And because it's limited to 3 hits, which is just, look, sorry, I need to vomit real quick. Haven't seen hits these low since pretty much all of year 1. Since his extra attack's pretty dookie dog water, you're really not going to be putting in a whole lot of work with it. But thankfully, they did gas up his kit. I don't know how Kentoki is a year 1 servant and somehow just got off with a pretty decent kit. Although, similarly to Rider Kentoki, 2 of his skills are really strong, and then the other skill is just kind of like there, it just exists. So we'll talk about that as we go through it. Starting off with skill 1, you have Monstrous Strength, which is giving him a 50% attack buff for 1 turn on a 5-turn cooldown. You can almost think of this as his mana burst, although while mana bursts are tied to a specific card type, this is just general damage, so it's buffing up his NP, his buster cards, arts cards, crit damage, quick cards, all that good stuff. He is just going to be an absolute monster for 1 turn, just Tim Tam slamming people into the ground. The only issue is that 1, in modern FGO, you really want your skills to have numerous effects. You want to be getting more out of the skill. And the other thing is that while this attack buff is really big, it only lasts for 1 turn. And this was really good when we were in year 1, when bosses didn't have break bar and the strategy was to just slam the opponent for as much damage as physically possible and just try to one-shot them. Unfortunately, current FGO is more based around 3-turning things, as a lot of bosses typically have 1 to 2 break bars. And so you really want servants that have a lot of longevity. That's why a lot of the top tier support type servants are giving a lot of these 3-turn buffs. You know, people like Castoria giving an attack buff, an NP gain, and a 3-turn arts mana burst. Like, stuff like that is just really good for helping a servant be really good for all 3 turns, which is the standard length of, you know, kind of a common battle now, whether it be 3 turns for farming or 3 turns for a boss battle. And that's the only unfortunate thing about this first skill, is that it gives him a lot of power. It gives him so much gas, but only for 1 turn, and then his damage severely drops off when he's losing this, because this is really his only offensive buff that he has. Technically, his NP does have something for him, but we'll get to that later. Honestly, I feel like a really easy buff to give to this skill is just like give him 50% crit damage for 3 turns, and then make the attack buff 50% attack for 3 hits. At least that way you can kind of spread the damage out a little bit. Like maybe you fire your NP on turn 1, and then turn 2 you can just do like a Buster Brave Chain with your face cards. At least in that aspect you spread the damage out a little bit. They could also just straight up do that, but then also just have the skill drop like 30 stars or something, kind of like Quetzalcoatl. I think that would also be really powerful. But at this point, I'm kind of just coping for a better skill. His second skill, again, obviously still really strong. And this one they probably don't need to touch because it's just a 50% battery. And this is actually what is keeping Kintoki relevant, because there are a lot of very weird nodes in FGO, because I don't know what it was during the Scotty meta, but they just thought it was a hilarious meme to throw in waves where it was like, you fight 1 enemy, 3 enemies, and then 3 enemies. Or you fight 2 enemies, then 1 enemy, then 3 enemies. Or you fight 3 people, then 1, then 3. Like, they just thought it was a hilarious meme to sell everybody Scotty and then be like, oh yeah, by the way, here's a lot of the best nodes that if you run Scotty, you're going to struggle to get through this. So I don't know why it was a hilarious meme to them, but people like Kentoki, who were these really strong servants that you didn't need to buff at all because they had really strong explosive 1-turn damage. He had his own 50% battery, so it wasn't even a hassle to really get his NP. Just slap on any free-to-play 50% starting charge CE, even if it was just like Dragon's Meridian, right, which is like a 3-star CE you can get from the Friend Point gacha. It made him really good to just like come in there, wave 2, bonk the weird just 1 enemy in that wave, and then you could just slide him back out, or just leave him there if you already dumped the buffs onto your main farming person and then just farm like normal. So yeah, who would have thought a year 1 servant getting a 50% battery off rip would still allow them to be somewhat relevant to this day. As for what they could give this skill, I just want one of his skills to drop like 30 stars. So if the first one is going to be like an attack and crit damage buff and they're not going to give it stars, let this one drop 50% NP and then like 30 stars or something along those lines. Then we have his third skill, which, do I really even need to talk about his third skill? He gets a debuff resistance against offensive debuffs for 3 turns, and it's 120%, which is really good. The reason why, if you guys are not as antiquated with like the percentages and everything in FGO, is the reason you have over 120% is because you can actually have buffs that kind of bypass those if they buff their own debuffing ability and stuff like that. Having like 120% is kind of like having debuff immunity because you're kind of protecting yourself a little bit more. And it is good because it means your Kentoki, as long as the third skill is up, pretty much can't get his attack lowered or anything, because the main thing he's doing is damage, and God forbid the enemy lowers his ability to do damage. So it's like kind of good. And then he has a 3k heal, but I don't know if you guys know this, he's a Berserker, and I don't think a 3k heal is going to help him stay in the fight. I think honestly, you just slap on like a dodge, an invincibility, a guts, just something on this skill. Big 100% defense for 1 turn. I don't care what it is. Give him some hardline measure of survivability so he doesn't just get like melted in 2.5 seconds. Finally, if we close out with the NP, it is just a big Chungus NP. It even has 1 hit on it, so it's not like you're going to do any like funny memes where you're going to drop a whole bunch of stars by bonking the enemy with like a 10-hit single target NP. No, you're not doing any of that. You're just bonking the enemy for a lot of damage. It is upgraded. It's why Kentoki can just do an insane amount of damage. He's able to pierce defense, which is really strong, although unfortunately is one of the more, I guess, rare buffs that bosses give themselves, because usually they're focusing on dodges or invincibilities. But I don't know, maybe if you're struggling with Demeter, you could bring Kentoki and just bonk her in the head. She's like, I'm gonna give myself a whole bunch of defense, and Kentoki's like, well, I'll just take out 1 bar of her HP, just boop, just take that out right there. And if you can keep him alive with Double Merlin, just keep smacking her in the face with that, and then you kind of just call it a day. The thing that I was talking about earlier that does still kind of help his damage is the fact that he reduces the enemy's Buster resistance by 30% for 2 turns. So you bonk them with the NP. Any follow-up buster cards in that Brave chain will get extra damage. And then if you have enough NP left over, whether it be from like Plug sitting in a waiver, or maybe you're on JP and you're using him with double Koyanskaya and they're kind of just like dumping a whole lot of just bunch of NP into him, you fire a second NP. It's not going to be as bad. You still are losing your first skill, which is the majority of your damage, but at least the fact that you can slap them with the buster resistance down kind of makes up for it. It gives them a little bit more damage so it doesn't completely fall off. And then finally, the overcharge is a 50 to 100% chance to stun, which is some measure of survivability, I suppose, because if you can stun the enemy, you can just not get blasted that turn. And it's not like 50% is bad. I mean, if you're not taking into account like innate debuff resistances and everything, I mean, a coin flip to stun is pretty good. But again, a lot of boss servants have like magic resistance or goddess core, or they're going to give themselves debuff immunity. So it's good, but it's kind of situational how good it's going to be. And at the end of the day, he's kind of just a good beat stick servant. I mean, if you just need to bonk somebody really hard, Kentoki's kind of your guy. Again, I'm summoning for him because I just like his outfit in Lost Build 5.5. I don't know how often I'll actually use the guy, but I imagine I'll bring him out a little bit for some golden sparks. Do I recommend you summon for Kintoki? No. Is Kentoki really going to bring up the strength of your account very much? Not really, especially when like you could just wait a month and then summon for Berserker Musashi and then go into getting Castoria, and then you can pretty much just do whatever you want in the game at that point. But like, I do understand his outfit's really cool, so like if you want to throw a multi at it, I would be completely understanding of that because I'm going to do it. I really can't judge. But if you're asking me for like actual advice, I would tell you don't summon for Kintoki. What are you doing? Save for Castoria. With all that being said, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe because I upload these videos every single day and we're trying to get to 100k. I saw we just cleared 16k. I'm pretty happy about that. I actually cannot believe that 20k is coming up because it's just a little bit of a insight into, you know, my whole experience with YouTube. 10k is where I thought I was going to stop. I thought 10k was all I was ever going to get. That was pretty much the life goal. Now we're at 16k, closing in on 20k, and I'm kind of looking at 100k in the distance, and I'm like, huh, maybe I can climb that mountain. So like the video, subscribe, comment your thoughts all to help, you know, support the channel for free. If you want to further support the channel for free, you can download LD Emulator, which is linked down in the description down below. Just a really good way to go ahead and just play any mobile game you really want on your computer. I know I really like using it for streaming, and also setting up a macro, which is kind of like an auto button clicker for opening things like boxes and whatnot. That's always really nice. You can also join the Loot Cakes Alliance, which is down in the description down below as well, which basically anytime anyone in the Alliance spends money on FGO, we all get a little bit of points back for it. You can use those points to get gift cards, so it's kind of like just getting a little bit of extra bang for your buck. And like, even if you're not going to spend a whole lot of money on FGO, like even if you're just a guy that like buys GSSRs, you still get points whenever like I buy Sane Course and stuff, so like might as well join, I guess. Then finally, if you want more just free content, I stream every weekday over on the Twitch. I'm usually streaming FGO. Sometimes I stream Master Duel. That's more on like the weekends though, like usually around when I'm going to host a tournament or something. I also stream Elden Ring sometimes with my buddy Don. So yeah, go out to the Twitch, come out and support the streams. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, light, guys.